Angels appear at those turning points in life where we have lost our way.
Or messengers of Satan.
It's those fallen angels, the demons, who bring evil to us.
Some people claim to have been rescued by angels.
And I just felt myself being lifted up.
Others tormented by them.
They were pulling and pushing. That evolved into biting and clawing.
Angels, good or evil? Next. Few of us spend much time thinking about angels, though we see their images almost every day. On the covers of national magazines and smiling back at us from the shelves of souvenir shops. The art collection of even the smallest museum will usually include some paintings of angels, and perhaps even a demon or two. Angels can seem almost quaint, a sentimental adornment to our busy modern lives.
When we think about angels, I think most often kind of the images of traditional Hallmark card pictures come to mind. We know with angels with wings, there's a certain etheric quality.
But there is far more to angels than meets the eye. Much of what we think we know about angels is at odds with their long and curious history. To begin with, no more than 3 angels are actually mentioned by name in either Jewish, Christian, or Islamic scripture. But there are literally thousands of angels with names like Matanbukas, Garnabiel, Suratan, or Imamia, who show up in more obscure religious texts. Often, stories about angels disagree with one another. Their annoying inconsistencies would test the patience of a saint.
The lore that has arisen around angels is contradictory and very confusing sometimes. In one text, an angel may be good, and yet another text, he may be a fallen angel. So which is it? A lot of it depends on whose system you want to follow.
What's interesting in religious studies is the extent to which what amounted to yesterday's official canons have a way, in another generation, when evaluated by the priests of that generation, of being dismissed as not real.
Even the answers to basic questions, like who are the archangels, have changed over the centuries. The archangels recognized in 600 AD were not the same as those of 800 AD, and neither group is identical to the list of archangels recognized by many Christians today. Likewise, the darkest angel, Satan himself, varies according to who is telling the tale. In some texts, Satan is a dependable servant of God. In others, a bitter enemy. In medieval accounts, Satan was a demon who prowled the earth, spreading greed, dissension, and death. The appearance of angels has also varied. There were a few instances, beginning with the Hebrew Bible, where not even wings were standard equipment on angels.
None of the people who turn out to be angels as we now understand them, and they're called messengers in the Bible, none of them are described as having wings. They fly nowhere. They walk just as ordinary mortals walk.
It was fairly conventional within the early centuries of Christian art to depict angels simply as men, that is, as human figures without wings. This, however, failed to convey anything that was uniquely angelic, and so wings were added to these human beings, making them into the angels that are so familiar to us today.
Likewise, Satan and demonic angels have also been depicted in numerous ways, most often with horns, leathery wings, or the attributes of serpents and dragons. But in early Christianity, demons had not yet assumed such frightening proportions.
On the contrary, they're reduced in size, and they look like sort of flies or gnats that are buzzing around. And this made a theological point, namely that the power of God had defeated the power of the devil and reduced the demonic armies to a mere kind of irritant like one would receive from a mosquito.
Among the few angel attributes that have remained consistent is their status as messengers. Evil angels are emissaries of the satanic realm, good angels of the divine.
One of the very common things said about the divine is that the divine is transcendent. That is, God is beyond this world. God transcends this world. Angels are messengers. They're go-betweens. They communicate between this high, transcendent, exalted world of the divine and the lower world of this earth where the rest of us live.
Angels, both in ancient and in medieval and in modern accounts, appear at those turning points in life where we have lost our way. They can warn us of physical danger, but they also can warn us about a misstep, the potential for walking down a road that we really shouldn't walk down. So they're really about the old sense of the word salvation. In the ancient world, salvation had both a physical and a metaphysical side. It could mean salvation from drowning, or it could mean salvation from evil.
In contrast, bad or fallen angels seduce human beings away from the path of righteousness.
There are different versions of fallen angels and how they came to be cast out of heaven. Revelation talks about the great fall of Satan, the serpent, the deceiver of the whole world, who was cast out of heaven and his angels with him. There's another story that talks about Lucifer being cast out of heaven because of the sin of pride, and he takes 1/3 of the heavenly host with him. So we have different accounts of how the fallen angels came to be.
With their capacity to promote either darkness or light, angels have long played a central role in the politics of heaven.
How can a good and powerful God allow for evil in the world? This is one of the hardest and one of the most profound issues in all religion. Angels and demons help us out, because we can blame the angels and the demons for the evil in this world. It's those fallen angels, the demons, who bring evil to us.
First-hand accounts of contact with angels date back to biblical times and continue today. A former artist named Howard Storm is among those who claim to have witnessed both the light and the dark sides of the angelic realm.
I was a 38-year-old college professor and completely obsessed with my art career in the hopes that someday there would be a coffee table book of my artwork, and on the back spine it would say Storm. You know, I'd be so famous that I'd just be known by one word like Picasso or something.
But Storm's life took a different turn. While traveling with his wife in Europe in June 1985, Howard Storm suffered a sudden rip in his small intestine. Stomach acid and intestinal fluids oozed through the split.
A perforated duodenal ulcer is very, very serious. If no treatment is done, especially for 10 hours or longer, then there has to be an 80–90% fatality rate.
No surgeons were available. 10 hours passed. As Storm lay in the hospital, his vital signs grew faint. He drifted into unconsciousness, or perhaps beyond. Storm says that he suddenly found himself standing next to a hospital bed.
And I bent over the bed and looked at the face of the person who was in the bed, and it looked remarkably like me. So I couldn't figure out why there was someone that looked so much like me in the bed that I had been in, because I refused to believe that that was me. I also knew that the person in the bed wasn't alive.
Voices beckoned. Storm followed into a murky darkness.
In that darkness, they were at first pulling and pushing and shoving, and then That evolved into biting and clawing people, plucking my eyes out, chewing my ears off, eating out my ankles and other things.
Howard Storm recalls a voice urging him to pray. Though a confirmed skeptic, Storm says he was desperate enough to try.
So I called into the darkness, "Jesus, please save me." And with that, a small light appeared in the darkness and it became very bright and came over me. He brought a group of angels around us and they showed me my life. We went over my life in a chronological order. They said that I had to come back to this world, that I wasn't really a fit candidate for heaven, and I had to come back and try and live life differently. I was sent back, and when I was back in my body, the doctor arrived at the hospital.
Surgeons finally operated that night. Soon after, Storm returned to the United States and went straight into a hospital. He says the angels had no trouble finding him.
They used to visit me in the room, and they were beautiful beyond description, radiant. I believe that the image of wings that you see in art has to do with the radiance that they give off. I believe that angels aren't really winged creatures, but the radiance that they give off, which is opalescent in color, and they really brighten up the environment that they're in. I mean, they're like bringing, a small sun into the room.
As a direct result of these experiences, Howard Storm left the university. He was ordained and now serves as the pastor of Zion United Church of Christ in Norwood, Ohio.
George, how are you this morning?
More often than not, people who have these experiences, such as Howard Storm, are profoundly changed, permanently changed by these experiences. Speaking as a physician who has been practicing internal medicine for nearly 30 years, I know of no dream, no delusion, no hallucination that will cause these positive, permanent, profound, ongoing, life-altering changes. The angelic experience may be real.
Every time I had an encounter with an angel, I was startled, I was amazed, because there always is and always will be, I guess, a part of me that says this is all impossible, it can't be true. Have I really met angels? Have I really, been to hell and had these experiences? But I know that I have, and so I just have to go with the information that I've been given.
Stories of epic spiritual battles are almost as old as civilization itself. In fact, some of the earliest accounts appeared some 5,000 years ago in Egypt and the ancient Near East. It was in those distant times that the forces of good and evil would begin to manifest themselves as mythic supernatural beings, the vanguard of an army of angels to come. In the centuries before, we depended on weather reports and homeowners' insurance to protect us. The roar of thunder played like the voice of an angry god. A solar eclipse seemed nothing less than a vengeful deity devouring the source of life itself. It is no wonder that the ancients viewed the forces of nature as actual gods, fearsome beings who might unleash destruction unless appeased. It was against this backdrop that the first angel-like creatures began to appear. The most familiar attributes of these angel ancestors were wings. The lineage of winged creatures reaches all the way back to ancient Egypt.
We have very protective goddesses like Isis, and many times they are depicted with wings on their arms to show that with these wings they can really look after someone. It can be the husband Osiris, it can be everyone who needs protection. The highest god in the second and first millennium was Amun, and he has no wings, but what he had feathers on his crown to make clear that also here it is on one hand side a heavens aspect, on the other hand side a protective aspect.
Wings were also a central element in funerary art, signaling that divine protection continued even after death. The protective power of winged supernatural creatures can also be found among the kingdoms that flourished in Mesopotamia around 900 BC. This region between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers is often called the cradle of civilization. It lies within modern-day Iraq. In ancient times, gigantic statues of winged protective spirits known as caribs guarded the entryways of temples and palaces.
The cherub is a Mesopotamian divine being, intermediate between the gods properly defined and human beings, and something of a messenger and guardian, rather a ferocious being. They have this characteristic of being what the German scholars call Mischwesen, mixed beings, part bird, part man, part lion, part man.
The most familiar visual elements or iconography of angels came from the Greco-Roman traditions that dominated the Mediterranean world for nearly 12 centuries. It was during this time that wings became the trademark of the Roman and Greek messenger gods Mercury and Hermes.
Hermes is perhaps the great prototype of a divine figure whose function it was to convey messages between the gods and mortals. And wings, of course, are very helpful in kind of getting the news on time, so to speak.
In Roman mythology, the messenger god was Mercury. And Mercury was known for being able to move in and out, back and forth, coming and going, moving betwixt and between, which in a very real sense is like the element Mercury. If you've seen Mercury up close, it beads, it breaks away. If you try to collect it, it rolls, it can't be recovered. And it's a central aspect of the angel phenomenon, the sense in which it slips through the corridors of what our reality tells us is possible and what's not possible.
Wings also symbolized the thrill of conquest. In the Greco-Roman world, triumph was embodied by the winged goddesses Nike and Victory. The Greco-Roman pantheon also included lesser deities like Cupids and their cousins, the Erotes. Through them, the pleasures of love, music, wine, and revelry were added to the meanings evoked by wings. Not surprisingly, these frolicsome creatures showed up in jewelry as pendants and earrings, but they also showed up in more somber settings. This Roman sarcophagus from the 3rd century AD features a chorus line of Erotes and winged victories. Like the Egyptians before them, wealthy Romans planned carefully for their burial.
They had a strong idea of magic, that magic can really protect you. And if you show things, then you can bring them to reality and you can force the gods to look after you, to keep care for you. And so they connect themselves to winged goddesses, to Erodes, to Victoria. They want to have for themselves the triumph over the death.
The winged creatures of Greco-Roman religion, like those of Egypt and Mesopotamia before them, were not regarded as inherently good or evil.
If you look to Greek and Rome, then you have these winged sphinxes, which are a little bit dangerous, a little bit demonic, but Something which is demonic and dangerous can be, on the other hand side, also good, strong, protective. They saw, from their point of view, that the most of things have two sides.
However, the distinct identity of good and evil that we recognize today was also beginning to take shape. During the age in which Greco-Roman beliefs dominated the Mediterranean world, the ancient Near East was dominated by Persia, now known as Iran.
In those 12 centuries, everything we know is Western civilization. Athens, Jerusalem, Rome, all came into being. And in all that time, there were two world empires. There were the Romans, or the Athenians, on the one hand, and the Persians on the other.
The religion of the ancient Persians, Zoroastrianism, is practiced today by fewer than 200,000 believers, but it provides a crucial link in the evolution of monotheism and its angels. The prophet of this faith was a man named Zarathustra, or Zoroaster in Greek. He proposed the idea of a purely benevolent supreme being, Ahura Mazda. Often symbolized by a man emerging from a winged circle, Ahura Mazda actually means wise lord. Conversely, there was also a purely evil force, a serpentine demon known as Angramanyu, or Ahriman.
Zarathustra saw a cosmic dualism in which the good God, the creator God, Ahura Mazda, is entirely good, and his demonic opponent, who existed from eternity just as he did, Angramanyu, meaning the destructive or frightful spirit, is entirely evil.
Zoroastrianism proposes that this dualistic struggle between good and evil will end in a momentous final confrontation. This ancient faith also includes a lower rank of supernatural beings called Yazatas. They can be seen as predecessors of our modern-day angels.
Just as people will pray to angels for protection and success, or for healing in particular pursuits, so Zoroastrians also will invoke one or another Yazata.
Persian angels are often depicted holding a ring, which symbolizes Hwarna, a helping or protective power. Hwarna is also symbolized by the winged emblem of Ahura Mazda.
The Hwarna can be seen as a prototype for angels because it's winged, and wings are a salient feature of angels. It's also luminous, so we can imagine it as a glowing thing. And this is, of course, the origin of the halo, which is the Zoroastrian image.
The many angel prototypes of Zoroastrianism, plus its recognition of distinctly good and evil forces, laid the groundwork for the angelic realm as it is understood today. With the rise of Judaism, the winged creatures of the ancient world would slowly fade into oblivion. In their place, the faithful would now revere Gabriel, Michael, and an army of fierce guardian angels. For most of human history, our nervous ancestors found comfort in worshiping multiple gods. It was in the small kingdoms of Israel and Judah that people first put their fate in the hands of one god. Later known as Jews, they began writing down their beliefs around 1000 BC, 10 centuries before the birth of Jesus. The Hebrew Bible, or Tanakh, was composed over a period of roughly 800 years, from 1000 to 160 BC. Christians refer to it as the Old Testament. It is here that the angels we know today first took center stage. The first angels we read about are the cherubs, cherubim in Hebrew. In an early chapter of Genesis, God stations cherubs in the Garden of Eden to prevent Adam and Eve from sneaking back after their expulsion. But these cherubs are not the roly-poly angels of Valentine's Day. These angels are tough, the fearsome security agents of God. In both attitude and name, cherubs are derived from the Mesopotamian cherub.
Many of the gods and goddesses of the past have been incorporated into religious systems as angels and demons. They still retain some of their power and their strength, but they have been demoted.
For instance, the six-winged goddess from ancient Syria may have inspired a form of the seraph, a six-winged angel from the Hebrew Bible. Seraphs are almost entirely hidden by their wings.
Part of the idea there is that their true form is unavailable to us. I mean, we can't know what their nature is, and the wings actually obscure them. We don't know what they look like. We can't know what they look like. They're just so radically beyond the human.
Perhaps the most unusual angels in the Hebrew Bible are those reported by the prophet Ezekiel.
It's a strange and weird vision of the chariot of God descending, which he sees in a dream.
Ezekiel sees fire, lightning, and radiance around the chariot, as well as bizarre winged creatures with multiple faces. Each of these winged creatures has a human face, but it also has the face of an eagle, a lion, and an ox. 4 faces in all.
It's weird, 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 weird. It's not a dream to me, it's a nightmare. But an important nightmare because it exercised a tremendous amount of influence upon later Jewish law.
Though Ezekiel and many other texts include angels, only in the book of Daniel are angels actually named. This text is perhaps best known for the episode in which Daniel is thrown as a snack to the royal lions by an angry Babylonian king. But it is also in Daniel that the angels Gabriel and Michael make their world debut.
Gabriel and Michael are pure Hebrew names. Gabriel means, my God's strength will save me. Michael means, no one can rival my God. Michael, who is like my God. Michael became, in English pronunciation, Michael, and Gabriel, Gabriel.
For the first time, Gabriel assumes his role as the preeminent messenger of God. In Daniel, he announces God's plan to crush the Babylonians. Michael, standing ready to support Gabriel with some muscle, makes his first appearance as God's enforcer angel. But Michael and Gabriel are the exceptions. Nowhere else in the Hebrew Bible are the names of angels included.
There is an absolute desire to keep the angel in only one role only. He is the messenger of God. He is not an entity in and of himself or herself. There's a grave danger in beginning to give names and entities to angels as though God needs assistance, as though God needs someone to do the job for him. It makes inroads into the pureness of monotheism, which is the belief in one God.
This central idea of one supreme God also shaped the Hebrew Bible's view of the devil. There isn't one.
There is no word in Hebrew for devil. There's no word in Hebrew for the present day concept of Satan, meaning the bad angel, the head of the troop of bad angels. Satan, nowhere in the Bible, is considered as an enemy of God.
The Hebrew word Satan actually means adversary, a job description, not a name. In the Tanakh, the Satan belongs to God's inner circle of angels. He is an adversary of human beings, not God.
Satan seems to be a kind of prosecuting attorney in heaven who brings the evidence against a certain individual, like a Job, for example, and brings that evidence before God.
The angels appear before God in what seemingly was a weekly or monthly conference of the bigwigs in heaven. And God asks them a formal question, so what do you have to report for yourself? And they, what have you done? And they give their ordinary reports. He always turns to Satan. He says, and what about you?
During one such meeting, the Satan raises questions about Job's belief in God. The Satan then actually tests Job's faith by tormenting him with sickness, business failures, and even the death of his family, all with God's consent.
Satan originally was an adversary character. His role was to challenge people, to test them. And in that role, he works rather hand in hand with God to continually test humanity to make sure that people are on the straight and narrow path.
The dutiful role played by the Satan and the scant number of named angels found in the Hebrew Bible are no accident. In the 1st century AD, the leading rabbis of the time chose the books we now find in the Bible. They purposely excluded a vast number of Jewish texts in which evil angels and numerous named angels do play conspicuous roles. The works rejected by the rabbis became known as the Apocrypha, literally, the hidden books.
Now it's interesting, the word apocryphal comes down to us as meaning dubious texts, not worthy of being believed, not credible. And so in the ancient world, the religious texts were brimming with reports of angels, and the fact that those reports ceased to be handed down as official did not mean that those reports went away.
Many of these hidden books borrowed characters from the Hebrew Bible. However, the apocryphal stories often embroidered the biblical account, weaving in angels and demons. Among the best known is the Book of Enoch.
Who was Enoch? In the Hebrew Bible, he appears in 3 sentences. 3 sentences. It said that one of the ancients gave birth to a son named Enoch. And then we read as follows. Enoch lived 365 years. Vayitalech Chanoch et Elohim, and Enoch walked with God. Ve'einenu, and then he was no more. Ki lakach oto Elohim, for God took him. A very strange passage.
Out of that very short reference in Genesis 5:24 about Enoch's being taken into heaven by God, a really spectacular profusion of mystical literature emerges, which angels play a very important role.
In the first book of Enoch, earthly women attract the attention of lustful angels. God is enraged when these heavenly messengers sneak down and seduce the women.
The angels actually send Enoch to heaven to plead with God to either avert their punishment completely or to lessen it. God, recognizing Enoch's righteousness, is astonished that the angels would have the chutzpah to send this righteous man as their intercessor.
God is not swayed, however, and sends a great flood to destroy the beastly offspring that resulted from the angels' illicit couplings. Even so, God still looks favorably on Enoch himself, who is transformed into Metatron, super angel of Jewish myth and legend. In addition to their legions of good angels, the hidden texts swarm with bad angels as well. It is in the apocryphal Jewish texts that the Zoroastrian idea of an evil, destructive spirit takes root.
There is an observable dualism in Judaism. Interpretations of biblical stories where previously some human failing was responsible for a problem, we now find that that problem is attributed to the intervention of a demon.
One such arch-fiend, Samael, wreaks havoc in the second book of Enoch, where he is identified as the Prince of Demons. In some works, Samael is portrayed as the angel of death, who dribbles a fatal poison from the point of a sword into the mouth of a dying person. Satan's fall from heaven does not appear anywhere in the Hebrew Bible, but it can be found in an apocryphal text, the life of Adam and Eve. There, Satan infuriates God by disobeying a divine command to worship Adam. Satan tries to justify his refusal, arguing that he was made first and is therefore of higher rank than Adam. God doesn't buy it. Satan is expelled from heaven, only to become the architect of all evil. And then there's Lilith, a sultry female demon. Lilith gained notoriety from the peculiar fact that the Hebrew Bible includes not one, but two accounts of God creating a woman. The first chapter of Genesis says that God created man in his own image. Quote, "Male and female, he created them." A few verses later, God creates for Adam a woman, this one from Adam's rib. The Bible reveals no reason for the second telling.
But human beings always want to know more, especially when it comes to relationships. And the primordial relationship is that of Adam and Eve. So, what is it?
The explanation proposed in several apocryphal books is that Adam had a first wife before Eve. This was Lilith, and she was a bad girl, a woman with a past.
Lilith was a Canaanite divinity. Stories about her penetrated Jewish tradition. They don't get into the book of Genesis, but we do find them in the apocryphal books of the Bible and in Hebrew folklore.
When it came to sexual matters, she refused to obey Adam, who told her, "This is the way we're going to do it." And she said, "Are you telling me? I am a creature of God in the same way as you are."
She was smarter than he was, more powerful. Men don't like that in women very often, so they parted. But she cursed Eve, his new wife, out of jealousy.
Lilith, according to the story, was ultimately banished to the far reaches of some unsearchable ocean and became the mother of all of the she-demons in history and married Samael. So Samael and Lilith, they are the unglorious couple of Jewish mythic history. Bad, bad, bad angels.
But even while many of the apocryphal texts were being written, a new sect of Judaism was spreading through the Holy Land. Its followers embraced Judaism's rich legacy of angels. However, they would take these angels in new directions as they charted their own path as Christians. At least from the outside, it is easy to mistake Christianity for a European or American religion. But at birth, and in its formative years, Christianity was a Mediterranean faith. It grew up in a mixed neighborhood of Jewish, Greco-Roman, and Zoroastrian influences. The angels of Christianity reflect this mix. When the followers of Jesus split off from Judaism to practice what would become Christianity, they took with them the Old Testament and its angels. Gabriel, the messenger angel from the book of Daniel, plays the same role in the New Testament. But there, Gabriel announces one of the central events in Christianity. According to the Gospel of Luke, it is Gabriel who informs Mary that she will be the mother of Jesus, the Son of God. The stunning face-to-face meeting between Mary and Gabriel is depicted in numerous paintings. In some, Mary is shown with a look of surprise. More often, one of surrender.
The actual story indicates a much more robust confrontation between the two. Mary challenges Gabriel. She says, "How can this be, since I've known no man?" The angel is essentially presenting something to her that she finds, and as we would find, understandably, absolutely unthinkable, impossible.
In light of Gabriel's importance to Christianity, it is perhaps surprising that he also assumed a role from Greek mythology. In that system, the god Hermes escorted the souls of the dead to heaven.
The idea is that the transition from this life into the next world is a perilous journey. And it's understandable that given the perils of the journey, it's quite important that there be such an angelic guide. And in Christianity, this is the task of Gabriel.
In this medieval carving, Gabriel swoops down from the sky to the Virgin Mary, who lies on her deathbed. Here, he returns to heaven, cradling her soul.
These images had their roots in ancient time. You wanted to be protected by someone when you come to the most difficult and dangerous point in your life, which is the death. And it was depicted, all the cultures, with winged creatures, with winged beings. And I think it was clear that in Christianity they took it over.
Of course, early Christians also drew on the Hebrew Bible, reinterpreting accounts such as Ezekiel's haunting vision of angels. Ezekiel had described them as human figures, but with 4 faces. One is human, the others a lion, an ox, and an eagle. In those 4 faces, Christians found symbols of the 4 gospel writers: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Early Christian theologians also adopted some apocryphal books from Judaism, which they granted full status as sacred canonical texts. The most prominent example was the Book of Tobit, with the central character, the archangel Raphael.
Raphael serves as a guide and mentor to Tobias, the son of Tobit, who was sent on a very difficult errand in an effort to find a remedy for his father's blindness. What's interesting about this book is that it shows not just a momentary intercession by an angel, but an ongoing relationship between a human being and his guide, his angel.
The text also features a villain, the demonic evil angel named Ashmedai, or Asmodeus.
In the Book of Tobit, there is a very prominent devil indeed, named Ashmedai. Ashmedai is a Zoroastrian creature. He is, in fact, an embodiment of Angramanyu, the demon of anger, because chief amongst the evils, the vices caused by the destructive spirit, is anger. From anger comes everything else.
Bad angels like Ashmedai, and most prominently Satan, play a different role in Christianity than in Judaism.
As time passes, Satan assumes a much more negative role, a much more diabolical role, so that Satan, from being this prosecuting attorney in the skies, becomes the force of evil that is set against God.
The Christian Satan is irredeemably evil. In the New Testament, Satan is denounced from beginning to end. The ultimate clash between Satan and God is described in the book of Revelation. The sun spits flames that incinerate the world. Earthquakes tear mountains from their roots, and the sky itself begins to fall. Michael leads an army of God's angels against Satan and his horde of destructive angels.
Satan and his minions, it is said in the book of Revelation, will at last be punished, thrown into the abyss. And then only good will survive thereafter, and God will be triumphant and the people of God.
The Christian vision of the end time includes a final judgment. Michael is often shown holding scales, symbolizing the weighing of souls and their destiny in either heaven or hell. Over the centuries, Christian theologians wrote extensively about the nature of angels. Among the most influential of such works was a 6th century text, the Celestial Hierarchy.
The celestial hierarchy is important to us because it sets out in detail 9 orders of angels. The heavens are divided into 3 tiers and 3 levels in each tier, and each tier has a name, a type of angel, and specific duties.
Though largely obscure now, these angel categories or choirs guided the church for nearly 1,000 years until the 1500s. A few of the choirs are still familiar. Seraphim were the highest ranked, the nearest to God. Those closest to the material world, plain old everyday angels, were ranked lowest. They were the order best suited for contact with human beings. The archangels, literally chief or most important angels, supervised the lower angels. According to legend, they also served as guardians to select VIPs, such as heads of state or religious leaders. Celestial hierarchy named 7 archangels. In the 8th century, 4 were eliminated from the list because they had first appeared in apocryphal works. When Protestants broke from the church in the 1500s, they demoted the Book of Tobit to the Apocrypha and dropped Raphael from the list. Today, Raphael and the Book of Tobit can be found only in the Catholic version of the Old Testament. But angels and demons were not confined to religious texts. They also made their way into literary works. One of the most influential of all books dealing with angels was Paradise Lost, an epic poem written by John Milton in the late 1600s. Paradise Lost is brimming with angels, good and bad. Milton actually invented the word pandemonium as a name for the capital of hell. Despite such artistic variations, virtually every angel depiction does share a common theme. Angels are a signpost announcing the presence of God.
Think, for example, of so many images of mother and child, or images of Christ enthroned, both of which are often flanked by a pair of angels or an army of angels. And try and imagine those images without those angelic figures, and they're drained to a certain extent of their divine power.
Over the centuries, Christianity put a distinctive stamp on the rich angel tradition it inherited from Judaism. In addition, Christian literature added scores of new angels. But the ranks of winged guardians would soon expand. Beginning in the 7th century AD, Islam would shine its own distinct light on angels. Until recently, the religion of the world's 1 billion Muslims was a mystery to most Americans. And lately, a shadow of fear and suspicion has been cast on the unfamiliar face of Islam. Despite some fundamental differences, Islam does share a common ancestry with Christianity and Judaism.
Islam looks upon itself as a continuation of the Judeo-Christian tradition. When you read the Quran, there are constant references to the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament. So the Hebrew prophets, the biblical prophets and patriarchs, and Jesus and Mary are very major figures in the Quran.
Islamic artworks, like these depictions of Adam and Eve, illustrate the connections. This scene, the drowning of Pharaoh's soldiers, is straight from Exodus in the Hebrew Bible. Even the baptism of Jesus is depicted reverently in Muslim artwork. The common heritage of Jews, Christians, and Muslims also includes angels.
In Islam, belief in angels is one of the tenets the characteristics of a believer. He believes in God, he believes in the book, and he believes in angels. So angels are not marginal, they are central.
The Quran, Islam's sacred scripture, is itself directly linked to the angel Gabriel.
Gabriel, or Jibra'il, as he's called in Arabic, is the angel of revelation, and it is Gabriel who recites the Quran to Muhammad. Remember, the Quran means Quran, in Arabic, al-Quran, the recitation. So Gabriel plays this extremely important role as the angel who brings the Quran to Muhammad, who announces to Muhammad that he's a prophet, that he's going to be the reciter of God's message.
It is Gabriel who escorts Muhammad on what is called the night journey, an epic pilgrimage through the heavens. At every stage, angels encourage the prophet. Ultimately, Muhammad stands alone, face to face with God. For observant Muslims, the ritual of prayer is a means of ascending to God.
The daily prayers were instituted after Muhammad came back from the night journey. They said, "Did you bring anything for us from God?" He said, "Yes, I brought you these prayers. Through these prayers, you participate in the return to God." And by extension, of course, every believer has the support of all these angels when they do the prayers.
The Quran, which recognizes Jesus as a prophet, also includes the Annunciation, the moment when Gabriel announces to Mary that she will give birth to Jesus. In addition, the Quran speaks of ethereal beings called watchers that resemble guardian angels.
In the Quran, it says for every soul there is a watcher, and the watcher is understood to be an angel. There is an aspect of God, a creature of God, an angel, who is there at every step, as close as our jugular vein, as the Quran says of God himself. They are a way for God to be present in our lives.
So you have traditions that say things like, an angel comes down with every drop of rain. How else does rain fall from heaven if angels don't bring it down? The angels are the messengers who bring down creation as we know it.
Islam also has its forces of evil, creatures known as shayateen, or Satans. As in Jewish tradition, the shayateen are adversaries of humanity, not God.
The prophets come, call us to God, go to our spiritual nature. The Satans come, says, no, you don't want to do that. You've got more important things to do yourself. Come on, get involved with this self. See, ignore the spiritual dimension. Look at what this wonderful earth and all this food and sex and control and power. You see, so this is this tension, and the soul is wavers in between.
Most of the shayateen, those who seduce humanity from the ways of the prophets, are creatures known as jinn.
This is a Quranic concept that I think is most familiar, of course, to people from the 1001 Nights. The genie, right? Aladdin in his magic lamp, he rubs it, the genie comes out. You know, if you've seen the cartoon, I mean, that's a very good, as a matter of fact, representation of the Islamic idea of the malleability of jinn creatures. Jinn are made out of fire, which means they have an appearance, but the appearance is not fixed. The angels are made out of light, and they don't have a form.
Most notorious among the jinn, and the closest figure to the Christian-style Satan, is Iblis. But in Islam, the battle between good and evil plays out on an individual more than on a cosmic stage.
Iblis, the Satan, is understood as kind of, again, the mythic embodiment of all bad tendencies in human beings: jealousy, envy, hatred, spite. All these sorts of things are sort of played out in the career of Iblis. He's definitely under God's control, doing the work of calling people in the wrong direction so they'll be able to discern what the right direction is.
Muslims, like Christians, envision a final judgment. However, Islam's end time is not the slugfest between good and evil set forth in the book of Revelation. In Islam, an angel named Israfil blows his horn twice, triggering the resurrection of the world.
The Quran says the earth is changed into other than the earth, and the heavens are changed into other than heaven. So there's some radical transformation of the nature of heaven and earth.
During this epic transformation, the deceased from all time are brought back to life to face their final judgment. As in Christianity, angels play a role.
God and the angels come down, see, and then judgment takes place, in all of which it's God doing the judging, but the angels are involved in bringing people and, are sort of the jury, as it were, but God is the judge.
One angel presents a scroll listing the person's good deeds. A second angel presents a list of bad deeds. God then makes the final call. Those deemed to be righteous are allowed into paradise, which Islam envisions as a bountiful garden. Everyone else is condemned to an eternity in hell in the company of Iblis. There is one other common thread linking the angels of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. For the most part, angels contact people only when angels themselves are darn good and ready. However, it would be only a matter of time until some followers of these different faiths came up with the same tempting idea, using magic to invoke angels whenever and wherever they pleased. It was probably inevitable. With awareness of angels and their powers so widespread, someone was bound to cook up a magic formula to contact them directly. Many of the magic spells and incantations that invoke angels trace their roots to stories in the Jewish Apocrypha, the so-called hidden books. One of these, the Book of Raziel, takes its title from an angel whose name means secret of God. Though the text first appeared during medieval times, legend says it dates back to the dawn of creation and Adam himself.
The tradition holds that this magical lore that we possess today, and which has permeated a lot of magical texts and rituals, and also our beliefs about angels, that this tradition does go back to the original book, the only book ever written totally in heaven and given to Adam, the very first book. It contains a magical alphabet for summoning angels, contains a lot of incantations for asking angels to perform various magical operations.
Some of the most popular magic spells come from a surprising source, King Solomon. Ruler of the Hebrews for some 40 years in the 10th century BC, Solomon is remembered even today for his wisdom. According to legend, Solomon's great knowledge gave him power over demons. The secrets he learned from these supernatural beings were compiled in a text called the Testament of Solomon. Jews and Christians alike made use of its incantations.
Various magical textbooks said to be written by Solomon himself were circulated and used by people who wanted to summon up presences to help them find lost objects, buried treasure, heal illnesses, bestow blessings, throw curses, and all sorts of spell casting.
The mix of angels and magic was widely accepted by followers of the Coptic Church, Egypt's native Christianity. Though they believed in one God, Egyptian Christians were also shaped by the ancient religion of the pharaohs.
They have a long tradition of more than 3,000 years dealing with a lot of different gods and goddesses, and suddenly there had not been a lot of gods anymore, local gods or personal gods, and so angels were an answer for them.
The Archangel Michael, God's right-hand man in the war against Satan, is regarded as one of the most powerful angels that can be invoked through magic. A Coptic text called in praise of Michael the Archangel includes numerous incantations and rituals for summoning the supreme guardian. The book lists 21 specific concerns Michael can address.
If you've had children who have died, if you are a male and you have experienced impotence, if you have a demonic presence in your life, if your animals are not behaving well, if you have trouble with your business, Michael can come. Michael will stand by your side, walk with you, and take care of you. That is how powerful and how close Michael can be.
And then there's Gabriel, another archangel invoked by numerous Coptic incantations.
The Gabriel that appears in these texts is a powerful, extraordinary, otherworldly kind of character. He has stars, cosmic features all around him. There are ring letters because the language of Gabriel is the language of the spheres, the language of the heavens. This is not a comfortable kind of Gabriel that you sit down and have coffee with. This is a cosmic Gabriel, this angel.
Yet another Coptic text, the magical book of Mary and the Angels, invokes 9 different angels with exotic names like Abiut, Garnabiut, and Garnabiel.
Sometimes the names are wild and unusual. We don't know where they came from, but these are, after all, wild and unusual kinds of creatures. So they can at times have spectacular names, unusual names, and so it is here.
The text itself, written in Egypt's ancient Coptic language, invokes the 9 angels in groups of 3.
Abiut, Garnabiut, Garnabiel, Pei Hurit, Ethrais, Epsoma, Na Jesus Christos, Peshera, Penuta, Kerais Pasoma. All of the needs that we have that cannot be resolved by doctors and nurses and bankers and employers and so forth, these angels can address. So that to have these powerful supernatural guardian angels with us is to have a dynamo of strength with us and to make us into dynamos of strength.
The tradition of calling on angels through magic is shared by Islam, though its writings are not as well known as Judeo-Christian texts. Still, familiar principles seem to be at work.
I've looked at some magical books, and yes, very often, part of the formulae they give for performing certain acts, helping to find a husband, curing someone of disease, sometimes call upon specific angels. And in the magical literature, you get a proliferation of angelic names. Each of these names, naming an angel has a specific function to play in terms of healing or some other activity.
While many spells seek help from righteous angels, some magic is intended to actually fend off a dangerous angel. An angel like Lilith, the bad girl of the Garden of Eden. According to legend, when Adam dumped Lilith in favor of Eve, Lilith vowed to kill Adam and Eve's descendants for all time. For many centuries, the death of an infant was blamed on Lilith. To keep her away, magical amulets like this one from the Book of Raziel were frequently placed on a child's bed. Other amulets invoke 3 angels who are said to have defended Adam and Eve against Lilith.
The book of the angel Raziel has pictures of the 3 angels, diagrammatic pictures. Their names are Sinui, Sasanui, and Semangluf. In Byzantine Christianity, one of them is called Saint Sicinius. The whole idea goes back to ancient Mesopotamia. So this is a case where cultures meet and adopt angelic beings from each other to deal with a problem that is part of real life.
Even today, angels are said to intervene when the life of a child is at stake. Just ask the Derrick family in Chapin, South Carolina. Like most 5-year-olds, Kenley Derrick loves to play. It's hard to believe she spent her first days on Earth hovering between life and death when she was born 3 months premature. one of 4 babies in Kenley's condition usually die.
They had a neonatologist come in and speak to us about the risks, and they're very clear on the worst case scenario when you're in that situation. So that was all very frightening, of course.
Kenley weighed 2 pounds. She was placed in a temperature-controlled isolette and wired to an army of monitors.
She would quit breathing. Her heart would quit beating. And the monitor would go off, and, you know, we would start panicking, and the nurses would just look over there like, you know, it's nothing to it, and they'd come over and thump her on her foot, and everything would kick back up, and she would start back breathing. But, you know, we were scared to death. We didn't know what to think or what to expect.
For Rocky and Sherry Derrick, the only task more difficult than watching Kenley struggle for life was having to leave her at the hospital each night.
And I would always put my hand on her and pray that if she were crying or afraid or needed to be picked up, that someone would be there to do that. And if the nurses or doctors were too busy, that God would hold her and that she would feel some arms around her, taking care of her.
After more than 10 weeks in the hospital, Kenley came home. However, it wasn't until Kenley was 3 that her doctor declared she was healthy. He also called her, quote, a miracle baby. Only later did the family suspect that Kenley had had some unexpected friends in very high places during those dangerous early days. This notion arose after Kenley asked her mother about the angels that look after babies.
The question was, did I remember the angels taking care of me? As if she thinks that everyone has angels taking care of them. And she said that she remembered the angels that were holding her when she was a baby, that they were very pretty, and that they were soft and silky, and that they held her.
Mysterious and awe-inspiring, angel encounters like those reported by Kenley Derrick date back thousands of years to biblical times. But during the last 500 years, science and industry increasingly captivated the human imagination. Faith in winged creatures wavered. Angels and demons would be pushed to the sidelines in a world ruled by the gods of technology. If angels had business cards, they might read something like this. Many believe that angels are the warriors of God and all that is good, the presumed winners in a final clash with Satan and the forces of evil. In early Christian art, angels were reverently depicted on plain gold backgrounds or shown as heavenly messengers, only partly materialized in the human world. With the coming of the Renaissance in the 1300s, this solemn view of angels started to change.
Angels were seen in landscapes and in interactions with human beings. And this trend continued to the point where angels appeared to have a sensuous life, and they appeared to have as much of a connection with the human as the divine.
By the time of the Renaissance, the angel had lost a lot of its theological importance and became more of an art figure.
One of the ironies of the way in which angels were depicted in increasingly sensuous and sensual contexts is that a kind of counter-response developed where there was a fear that this had gotten out of hand and that humans were copulating and fornicating with demons, and that demons were in our presence, in our midst, and we were in great and mortal danger of possession by demonic forces.
For some 300 years, this creeping fear of demons was actually fueled by the horrors of everyday life. Between 1300 and 1600, Europe endured a period of unparalleled violence and chaos. France and England bled each other dry in a string of wars that lasted 100 years. The Black Plague ravaged Europe, bringing an agonizing death to 1/3 of the population.
Demons were seen to be everywhere in the world, to tempt people, to lead them astray. Satan was loose everywhere, a formidable foe. And good angels seemed to recede into the background.
Christianity itself was torn by dissent. The split would end in the birth of Protestantism. But to church authorities at the time, it was a clear indication that Satan was gaining ground. The machinery of church and state, tooled up to combat evil.
The Inquisition focused a lot of attention on the demonic side, that demons were everywhere, attempting to turn people away from God.
In retrospect, we can see that the Inquisition itself almost was possessed by the very forces from which it was trying to protect people at that time.
But even while the Inquisition and witch hunts raged on, a few individuals were quietly observing, measuring, recording, thinking, inventing, testing, and discovering. Empiricism, the new scientific view of the world, helped diffuse the belief in demons. But in the process, the age-old belief in angels also came into question.
For most of the period in which angels appear, going back to antiquity, their reality was taken for granted. They were real in the lives of people who reported them and in the world. But with the rise of empiricism, with the rise of an emphasis on show me, on verifiability, on confirming, on finding footprints, it was a very difficult time for angel lore.
During the 1700s and 1800s, angels and demons were drained of their power. Even cherubs, the once fearsome protectors of the Garden of Eden, were transformed into little diapered angels.
We have taken all of the oomph out of the cherubs, and we have made them into these cuddly creatures that are more like house pets than the real cherubim.
We find angels appearing in architecture, in art, in ordinary household items in a way that they never had been before, as decorator items, as accessories, rather than as profound spiritual forces.
With every passing century, with every scientific or industrial advance, angels were pushed further towards irrelevance. By the Victorian era of the late 1800s, angels were little more than a picture postcard distraction.
In fact, their sole purpose seems to be to embody beauty rather than to be divine messengers or to execute some celestial function.
Even Lilith, the scourge of children and fearful mothers for 3,000 years, was turned into a sassy supermodel by Victorian artists. In the 20th century, the forces of evil came in the form of human beings and their inventions. Science and technology proved to be especially efficient as agents of death and destruction. Still, there were episodes that seemed the work of angels. During World War II, Corporal Dom Aquino served in an artillery unit attached to General Patton's Third Army. His off-duty quarters were in an abandoned house. One evening, Aquino heard a knock on the door.
I opened the door and there was a captain standing there, and he had his helmet in his arm, and it was the red diamond of the 5th Infantry and the Red Cross of the Medical Corps. He says, "I want you out of these quarters now." I said, "But sir, this is my off-duty quarters, I'm resting." He says, "No, this is a direct order, get out." So what am I gonna do? I had to get out.
Aquino found another place to sleep. The next day, he returned to the building.
I went upstairs, and right in the spot where I was sleeping, there was a big hole that was shattered. A shell came in through the window.
The previous night, German artillery had fired on American positions. Had Aquino slept in his usual place, he would have been killed instantly. When Aquino told his friends about the incident, they pointed out a glaring inconsistency in the account. The captain was a problem.
I was told that he was 100 miles away. The 5th Division was 100 miles. There was no 5th Division there, and there was no captain there. So I don't know. That's what I saw.
Is it possible that an angel made its way to Aquino's door disguised as a medical officer? A captain in the 5th Infantry Division?
Angels will do what is necessary to accomplish their ends. My guess is the angel looked as a person that would have been credible, believable to Dom Aquino. And it was more likely that he would in fact leave the house. So the angel did what the angel needed to do.
In the Dom Aquino story, you have a classic messenger angel. The question that always arises, of course, to any thinking, feeling person is why does God use angels to save some people and not others? And indeed, that is a fundamental paradox of faith. But what we derive from, say, an angel encounter is the hope and comfort that there are larger answers that someday will be revealed to us.
America's young soldiers returned from the Second World War to create a world of unprecedented prosperity and technological wonder. But it may also have been the last era in which science and technology were worshipped without question. In the end, machines didn't seem to bring happiness. As the 20th century wore on, humanity continued to unleash the forces of evil. After decades of being pushed aside, angels would finally be needed again back on Earth. Few achievements validated our faith in science and industry more than the space program. Finally, we could strut through the heavens, home of the angels themselves.
One of the questions that remains is, what role might angels have, or might demons have, in a scientific world? What role might angels have in a world where we have explored the heavens, and we know that the angels don't seem to live up there?
Yet even as science reached for the stars, angels were quietly making their presence felt back on Earth. One of the most striking modern accounts of angels came out of Findhorn, a remote wind-blown stretch of sand on the coast of northern Scotland. In the early 1960s, Peter and Eileen Caddy and Dorothy McLean planted a small garden at Findhorn. Later, others joined them. Findhorn was seen as an experiment in cooperation between human beings and the realms of angels and nature spirits. McLean says that she was able to make contact with a kind of landscape angel who presided over Findhorn, as well as spirits of individual species of plants. However, these garden angels were not anything like Renaissance angels in form.
To me, an angel is not restricted to a form. An angel can be here and there at the same time, just as the quality of joy can be in you and me and elsewhere and across the other side of the world at the same time.
The produce grown at Findhorn was of legendary size. Cabbages tipped the scale at nearly 40 pounds. Flowering plants shot 8 and 9 feet into the air, double their normal height. Scientists were baffled.
Farmers in the region could not get the same results. There was no apparent scientific explanation to account for the unusual flourishing of vegetation in this community.
However, there was a perfectly good explanation, if you accept the existence of angels and spirits.
It's as though nature said, look, we are here. How do I catch your attention? The largeness of the vegetables was simply a visible shout to the disbelievers. It was a wake-up call saying, we're here. Okay, now we're here, let's get on with it. The real work is, how do we work together? How do we cooperate?
According to Linfield and other veterans of Findhorn, the lessons learned in its garden are still relevant today.
It isn't as though I have to call them in. It's all here now. It's like if I close my eyes, do you go away? No. I open my eyes and there you are. Same with the landscape angel, same with any angelic presence. It's the act of listening and seeing and acknowledging.
Indeed, today in New York City, there is an organized, ongoing effort to acknowledge the presence of angels. It's up here, some 20 stories into the sky.
We receive upwards of 5,000 or more stories a year to our Angels on Earth magazine, and that roughly comes out to about 100 a week. And yes, I was surprised by how many people can say that they have encountered an angel in one form or another in their daily lives.
The letters are both handwritten and typed, polished and rough, as varied as the people who write them, but they all seem to share a common trait.
The person writing into us knows that she is going to tell us something that is unbelievable. People sort of automatically know that they should prove that they are of healthy mind before they even start to tell us, some amazing story.
Angels can take almost any conceivable form for the benefit of human eyes. We've had them as puffs of wind, we've had them as strains of music, or even starlight on a summer's night. What constitutes an angelic manifestation is far more varied than you would imagine.
There was a young woman, a policewoman, who was in the middle of a terrible shootout. She'd always prayed to St. Michael, and he appeared to her the way that you see him in paintings, with boots, a sword, the breastplate, wings, very much in the traditional style.
I do remember one story that a reader sent in. He was on his bicycle and he was coming down a mountain road. He was going way too fast. And he looked up and he saw what he believed to be a group of angels looking down on him. And it was at that moment that he realized he better slow down. Angels have always played a role in people's lives, and I think they will continue to play a role in people's lives.
One recent issue of Angels on Earth magazine featured a story about a young woman named Dana Lee Christmas. During the winter of 2000, Dana attended Seton Hall University in Orange, New Jersey. At the time, Dana was a resident advisor in this Seton Hall dormitory, and she was among the first to awaken early on January 19th, when a fire tore through the dorm. Dana ran through the flames into the hallway. She began knocking on doors, shouting, trying to wake the residents.
My hands were on fire. The back of my scalp was on fire. And I'm trying to pat the fire out of my fingers, and I'm trying to pat the fire out in the back of my scalp, but the pain won't go away. You could hear Dana going through the halls, and she was going through each and every room, up and down the halls, knocking on the door saying, "Guys, you gotta get up. You gotta get up. This is real. Get up, get up." That was scary, really scary, because if it wasn't for her, most of us probably wouldn't be here.
Roused by the warnings, roughly 100 students escaped, but 4 were still trapped inside. One was Dana Christmas.
I've never felt so alone in my life. There's no one to help you. There's no one to hear your cry. You're just alone in a dark room. And I make one last attempt back out into the hallway. And before I can get started, I collapse into the floor. And just then, I'm thinking to myself, I'm about to die.
Dana recalls starting to pray. Then, moments later,
all I could see was this bright light. And from what I could tell, it was a white t-shirt. But I didn't see a body. I didn't see any legs, I didn't see any arms. And I just felt myself being lifted up. And then I make it down the steps, and that person's gone.
Of the last 4 students trapped in the dorm, only Dana came out alive. Yet no one has ever come forward as her rescuer. Dana believes she was carried to safety by a greater power. Is it possible she was lifted by a guardian angel? Or is there another explanation?
Several things happen in these fires. In addition to the physical burns, the person inhales very noxious fumes, including carbon monoxide. This causes hypoxia, decreased oxygen to the brain. The hypoxia can cause definitely the feeling of floating, but when we induce hypoxia in a lab, it does not create angelic encounters or the sense of angelic encounters.
More than 2 years have passed since Dana Christmas emerged from the flames. She has undergone well over a dozen surgeries. More lie ahead.
Since the fire, I can truly attest to the belief that angels are alive and they're around. We might not be able to see them every day or know what their purpose is, but I believe that they are here.
It is a belief that has persisted for thousands of years. The age-old impulse to seek the protection of winged guardians has inspired stores like this one in Seattle, Washington. Here are literally hundreds of angels and gargoyles. Some are original designs. Others are inspired by the creatures that have guarded Europe's churches for centuries.
A lot of the gargoyles on churches do look kind of scary. They look demonic. People think of horns and wings, and you see gargoyles with horns and wings, and you get that idea. But gargoyles' purpose is to protect you from an evil spirit. It should be wrathful itself if it's going to really do its job. A lot of people do like something that's going to bring them luck or bring them protection. It's a scary world. And I think both, the gargoyle imagery, the angel imagery, makes people feel more comfortable.
Despite the prevalence of angels and the many reports of personal encounters, recent events suggest that the battle between good and evil is far from over. Many believe that the angelic impulse resides inside each of us, and that we are the frontline defense against evil.
We have the potential in our nature to be angels. And what is an angel? Someone, in my definition, someone who does good for the other person in a very unselfish way. It's not because he or she expects a reward. That's an angel.
It is possible angels are real. They have an autonomous, independent existence of some sort. If that's true, then that would not be unreasonable that we would have some need to interact. On the other hand, they may not be real, and the human need may be a series of projections, a deep sort of spiritual longing for us not to be alone in the universe. They may be both.
Do angels and demons truly exist? And if they do, what is their true purpose? Real or not, it seems clear that these fantastic creatures are more than simply messengers from the heavens. For many, they represent the best and worst impulses of humankind, an ongoing struggle between good and evil, a struggle that is waged daily throughout the world and within every individual.